For decades, the world has watched Roloff Farms stand as a golden symbol of rustic success, a sprawling empire built on pumpkins, reality TV fame, and the sheer willpower of one man. TLC has spent over 20 years painting Matt Roloff as a wealthy, genius entrepreneur, a man with the Midas touch who turns dirt into dollars and challenges into triumphs. We look at his custom builds, his constant renovations, and his grand visions, and we assume the bank account matches the bravado. But what if it was all a fake, debt-ridden illusion? What if the cameras were carefully positioned to hide the cracks in the foundation, not just of the buildings, but of the entire financial structure of the Roloff dynasty? Today, we are peeling back the curtain to expose the chilling house poor theory, a narrative supported by insider reports and financial speculation that suggests Matt Roloff isn't just downsizing, he is actually dead broke. We are going to connect the dots on how a secret financial ruin explains every terrible, confusing, and heartbreaking decision he has made in the last 3 years. The unfinished dream home isn't a monument to his success, it is a tombstone for his liquidity. The rejection of his children wasn't about tough love, it was about desperate survival. The empire is crumbling, and for the first time, we are going to tell you exactly why. But before we dive into the bank records and the buried secrets that TLC refuses to air, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We are the only ones brave enough to say the quiet part out loud, and you do not want to miss the updates we have coming down the pipeline about the future of the farm. Join the community, turn on notifications, and let's get into the story that changes everything you thought you knew about little people, big world. To understand the magnitude of this collapse, we have to look past the carefully edited episodes and look at the cold, hard math of the divorce. When Matt and Amy Roloff called it quits, it wasn't just an emotional split. It was the beginning of a financial hemorrhage that has never stopped bleeding. For years, viewers assumed that the buyout was a simple transaction, but new theories suggest it was a lethal blow to Matt's liquidity. Insider whispers have long circulated that Matt didn't just have millions sitting in a checking account ready to hand over to Amy. To facilitate that massive buyout, which is estimated to be nearly $1 million for her portion of the South Side alone, plus the earlier buyouts, Matt had to leverage the farm to the absolute hilt. We are talking about leveraging assets in a way that financial advisors would call suicidal. The theory is that Matt took out massive loans against the property equity to pay Amy off, effectively turning the farm from a profit-generating machine into a debt-servicing nightmare. He didn't own the farm anymore, the bank did. And this is where the rich entrepreneur mask starts to slip. When you are leveraged that highly, you are technically house poor. You might have millions of dollars in land assets, but you have zero cash to buy groceries, pay for construction materials, or handle emergencies. You are living in a mansion, but you are drowning in interest payments. This context completely reframes the frantic, almost manic attempts to sell the north side of the property. Remember when he put the big house on the market? The narrative on the show was that he wanted to downsize, or that he was just ready for a change. He spun it as a strategic retirement move. But look closer at the timeline and the urgency. That wasn't a man looking to retire. That was a man looking for a lifeline. Financial analysts who have observed the property listing speculate that the astronomical asking price of $4 million wasn't just greed, it was necessity. The theory posits that Matt couldn't sell the farm for a family discount price to Zach or Jeremy because the bank literally wouldn't let him. If he owes $3 million to the bank, and he sells the property to his son for $2 million, he is still on the hook for that missing million, money he simply does not have. This is the secret reason why the negotiations with the twin boys fell apart so spectacularly. It wasn't that Matt didn't want his legacy to continue with his sons, it was that he had leveraged their inheritance to pay for his divorce. He was backed into a corner where he needed top dollar from a stranger just to clear the liens on the property. When the property didn't sell, you could see the panic set in, even if the show tried to edit around it. He pivoted to short-term rentals, a desperate bid to generate monthly cash flow to service the massive debt interest that was compounding daily. This isn't the behavior of a multimillionaire with a diversified portfolio. This is the behavior of a man shuffling credit cards to keep the lights on. The house poor illusion is the only theory that makes sense of the chaos. He isn't holding on to the land because he loves it. He's holding on to it because he can't afford to sell it at a loss, and he can't afford to keep it, trapping him in a financial purgatory that is slowly eating him alive. The situation becomes even more dire when you consider the broader economic factors that hit right as Matt was making these leveraged moves. Interest rates skyrocketed. Construction costs ballooned. Inflation hit every sector of the economy. For a man carrying massive variable rate debt, which is common in large agricultural and commercial property loans, this was the perfect storm. Every percentage point hike by the Federal Reserve wasn't just a headline on the news. It was a direct hit to Matt Roloff's wallet, draining what little liquid cash he had left. We have received reports suggesting that during the height of the listing drama, Matt was seeking bridge loans, high-interest, short-term loans designed to keep a sinking ship afloat until a major asset is sold. This aligns perfectly with the erratic behavior we saw on screen. The mood swings, the sudden pressure on Karen to move things along, the bizarre conflicts with the children over trivial matters. It wasn't just grumpy old Matt, it was the stress of a man who knows that one missed payment could trigger a foreclosure that would humiliate him on a national stage. Think about the psychological toll of maintaining the image of the king of the farm while privately scrambling to find cash. This duality explains why he has been so aggressive about monetization recently. The pumpkin season prices, the fees for private tours, the relentless merchandise pushing, these aren't just savvy business moves anymore. They are the frantic clawing of a man who needs every single dime to keep the bank at bay. The farm is no longer a passion project. It is a hungry beast that demands to be fed, and Matt is running out of food. Furthermore, let's look at the dream house he is currently building. To the casual viewer, building a massive custom home looks like a flex. It looks like wealth. But in the construction world, starting a project of that magnitude while carrying significant debt is known as gambling on appreciation. The theory here is that Matt is banking on the completed new house, adding enough value to the property to refinance the entire debt load. He is literally doubling down, betting the last of his chips on a new construction in hopes that it will save him from the debts incurred by the old one. It is a high-wire act with no safety net. If this theory holds true, it also recontextualizes his relationship with Karen Chandler. Many have accused Karen of being a gold digger, but if Matt is actually broke and drowning in debt, the dynamic changes completely. Perhaps she isn't chasing his money because there is no money to chase. Instead, she might be the one managing the crisis, the one keeping the secrets, the one trying to steer Matt away from total insolvency. It explains her hesitation to move into the chaos, her desire for a separate home in Arizona, and her reluctance to get legally entangled in the farm's messy finances. She sees the books. She knows the truth. The house poor illusion forces us to rewatch the last 3 seasons with a new lens. Every time Matt complained about the kids not understanding business, he wasn't talking about work ethic. He was talking about solvency. He couldn't explain to Zach that the family price was mathematically impossible because that would require admitting that he, the great Matt Roloff, had mismanaged the empire into the ground. His ego wouldn't allow him to say, "I'm broke." So instead he said, "You're not ready," and torched his relationship with his sons to save his pride and hide his debt. As we move deeper into this investigation, we have to look at the specific numbers regarding the new build. This wasn't just a house. It was a custom, accessible mansion designed to be Matt's final fortress. But sources from the local construction industry in Oregon have hinted that the project has been plagued by stop work orders and delayed payments to contractors. In the industry, silence on a job site usually means the money has run dry. The skeletal frame of that house stood untouched for weeks at a time, not because of planning, but because the cash flow wasn't there to pour the concrete. This is the setup of the ultimate downfall. We have a man who bought out his ex-wife with money he didn't have, alienated the only people who could have helped him carry the burden, and then decided to build a castle on top of a sinkhole. Matt Roloff has spent a lifetime controlling the narrative, editing the story to make himself the hero. But the one thing you cannot edit, the one thing you cannot manipulate with producer meetings and confessionals is a balance sheet. And right now, the balance sheet is screaming a warning that we are only just beginning to hear. The stage is set. The debts are high, the family is fractured, and the walls are closing in. But if you think the debt from the divorce and the failed sale is the whole story, you are wrong. That was just the tip of the iceberg. What we are about to uncover regarding the specific construction costs of the new mansion and a series of failed secret investments will show you that Matt isn't just treading water, he is already under. The narrative of the wealthy, brilliant architect of Roloff Farms begins to disintegrate completely when we turn our eyes to the massive, unfinished structure currently casting a long shadow over the property. This is the twist that turns a story about a man downsizing into a story about a man drowning. We need to talk about the mansion mistake, the dream house project that has spiraled so far out of control that financial experts believe it is the single greatest catalyst for Matt Roloff's secret insolvency. On the show, Matt presented the new build as his final masterpiece. It was supposed to be a custom-designed, fully accessible log cabin hybrid, a symbol of his legacy and a comfortable nest for him and Karen. But let's look at the reality of construction in the post-pandemic economy. Matt broke ground at the absolute worst possible time in modern history to build a custom home. We are talking about a period where lumber prices didn't just rise, they tripled. Steel, concrete, and skilled labor costs skyrocketed overnight. A project that might have been budgeted for $1.5 million in 2019 suddenly became a $4 or $5 million albatross around his neck by 2022. Insider theories suggest that Matt, in his classic optimistic hubris, refused to adjust his plans. Instead of scaling back when costs exploded, he pushed forward, convinced he could outsmart the market. But the market doesn't care about reality TV fame. We have seen the footage of the house sitting as a skeleton for months on end. The show tried to spin this as supply chain issues or contractor scheduling conflicts. But anyone in the construction industry knows the code. When a job site goes silent for weeks, when the crew vanishes and the equipment is hauled away, it usually means one thing: the checks stopped clearing. The house poor illusion suggests that Matt ran out of liquid cash midway through the build. He had poured millions into the foundation and the framing, draining his reserves, only to find that the cost to finish the interior had doubled. This created a terrifying sunk cost trap. He couldn't stop building because a half-finished house is worthless and dragging down the property value of the entire farm. But he couldn't afford to keep building because his bank accounts were running on fumes. He was stuck in a financial paralysis, forced to scramble for cash just to buy the next load of drywall. This explains the erratic, piecemeal progress we've witnessed. It explains why he's doing the work in strange bursts. He's building paycheck to paycheck. When the TLC season check clears, a window gets installed. When pumpkin season revenue hits, the roof gets finished. He isn't building with a war chest. He is building with pocket change, desperately trying to cover up the fact that he miscalculated the budget by millions of dollars. The dream home has become a vampire, sucking the lifeblood out of the farm's finances. But the mansion is only half of the twist. If the house was the only problem, Matt might have been able to weather the storm. The darker, more secretive part of this theory involves what Matt was doing with his money while the cameras weren't rolling. For years, Matt has portrayed himself as a genius investor, a man with a diverse portfolio. But reports and deep dive speculation into his business dealings suggest a series of catastrophic investment failures that have been carefully scrubbed from the show's narrative. We have to remember that Matt is a risk taker by nature. That is how he built the farm. But risk takers often don't know when to stop. There is a strong belief among industry watchers that Matt, fearing the inevitable cancellation of Little People Big World, tried to aggressively diversify his income streams into high-risk, high-reward ventures that flopped. There are whispers of failed tech investments, attempts to launch automation startups that never got off the ground, and potentially even significant losses in the speculative cryptocurrency markets that crushed many investors in the last 2 years. While we cannot see his tax returns, the behavior fits the profile of a gambler chasing losses. When you combine a multi-million-dollar budget overrun on a house with a portfolio that is tanked in value, you get a liquidity crisis of epic proportions. This is where the facade truly drops. Matt Roloff isn't just cash poor because his money is tied up in land. He is cash poor because he lost the liquid cash he had in bad bets and a vanity construction project. This perspective shines a harsh, revealing light on the failure of the short-term rental plan for the big house. Remember the fanfare? Matt announced he was turning the original family home into a luxury rental, competing with high-end Airbnbs. He projected massive profits. He poured money into renovating it, staging it, and marketing it. But look at the booking calendars. Internet sleuths who have been tracking the availability of the property have noted that for long stretches of time, the house sits empty. An empty rental property is not an asset. It is a liability. It is a drain. You still have to pay the property taxes, the insurance, the utilities, the landscaping, and the cleaning crews, whether anyone sleeps there or not. If the theory holds that Matt is broke, then the failure of the rental business is the nail in the coffin. He was banking on that rental income to service the debt on the new house. When the bookings didn't materialize because, let's be honest, the price point was absurdly high for a farm in Hillsboro, Oregon, his financial bridge collapsed. Suddenly, the empire looks like a house of cards. The pumpkin patch, which used to be pure profit, is now likely the only thing keeping the lights on. But even that is a seasonal gamble. One bad crop, one rainy October, and the entire precarious stack of debts comes crashing down. This reality explains the desperation we see in his eyes during the harvest episodes. It's not just about tradition anymore. It's about survival. He needs those pumpkin dollars to pay the mortgage on the house he can't afford to finish and the house he can't manage to rent. This financial terror also explains the bizarre, almost ruthless way he has started monetization of the fan base. The cameo videos, the constant pushing of branded merchandise, the exorbitant fees for private tours. These are not the actions of a comfortable tycoon. These are the actions of a man who needs $500 today to pay an electric bill. It is a humiliating, frantic hustle that stands in stark contrast to the relaxed, wealthy patriarch image TLC tries to project. And let's go deeper into the house poor psychology. When a person is in this level of financial distress, they become defensive, paranoid, and controlling. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the Matt Roloff we have seen lately? The man who snaps at his family, who changes the rules of the game constantly, who refuses to let go of control? That is the behavior of a man who knows he is one mistake away from losing everything. He can't delegate because he can't afford for anyone to see the books. He can't let Zach or Jeremy take over because they would immediately see that the farm isn't a gold mine. It's a debt pit. The twist is that Matt Roloff is trapped in a prison of his own making. He built a life that requires a millionaire's income to sustain, but his actual liquid wealth has evaporated. He is living in a terrifying limbo where he owns millions in assets but can't buy a sandwich without checking his balance. The unfinished mansion stands as a monument to this hubris, a hollow shell, just like the financial illusion he has maintained for so long. Consider the garage sale aspect we've seen on social media and the show. Matt is constantly selling off farm equipment, old props, and random items. He frames it as cleaning up. But rich men don't spend their weekends haggling over the price of a used tractor or selling old wagon wheels to strangers. Men who need cash do that. This is a liquidation sale disguised as spring cleaning. Every item that leaves the farm is a desperate attempt to inject liquidity into a dry bank account. This theory also casts a shadow over his relationship with the production company. Is Matt refusing to retire from the show because he loves the fame? or because the TLC paycheck is literally the only consistent income stream he has left. If the show gets canceled, the bank forecloses. It's that simple. He is a hostage to the producers, forced to dance for his dinner, forced to manufacture drama with his children because without the show, the creditors come knocking. The house poor illusion isn't just about real estate. It's about the collapse of the American dream narrative that the Roloffs represented. We watched them build it up, and now, behind the scenes, we are watching Matt frantically try to keep it from burning down. The millions are gone. The investments failed. The rental is a bust. The new house is a money pit. And Matt Roloff is standing in the middle of it all, smiling for the cameras, pretending he's the king of the castle, while the moat is filling up with red ink. Now, as the pieces of this financial disaster settle into place, we have to look at the victims of this collapse. It's not just Matt. This secret bankruptcy explains the most controversial, heartbreaking moment in the show's history, the failed negotiation with Zach and Jeremy. We all thought Matt was being greedy. We thought he was being a hard-nosed negotiator. But what if he literally had no choice? What if the bank was the one holding the gun to his head? Now, finally, the puzzle pieces fit together. The financial terror we have uncovered explains everything. When you look at the last 3 years of chaos on Roloff Farms through the lens of a secret insolvency crisis, the confusing, hurtful behavior of Matt Roloff suddenly becomes crystal clear. It wasn't about control, and it wasn't about teaching his children a lesson. It was about math. It was about a man frantically trying to balance an equation that had already collapsed. Let's go back to the negotiation that destroyed the family, the buyout of Amy. Viewers were stunned when Matt offered what seemed like an insulting lowball figure for her shares of the property. The narrative at the time was that Matt was being stingy, that he was trying to cheat his ex-wife out of her fair share to maximize his own profit. But the house poor theory offers a much darker explanation. He didn't offer her a low amount because he wanted to. He offered it because it was literally every single cent he could scrape together. Insider speculation suggests that Matt had tapped out every credit line and liquidated every available asset just to put that offer on the table. He wasn't negotiating from a position of power. He was negotiating from a position of desperation. He knew that if he couldn't buy her out at that rock-bottom price, he would be forced to sell the entire farm immediately to pay her, leaving him with nothing. No legacy, no show, and no home. The cruelty of the negotiation wasn't malice, it was panic. He was fighting for his life. This leads us to the most heartbreaking chapter of the saga, the rejection of Zach and Jeremy. For seasons, fans have screamed at their televisions, asking why Matt couldn't just give his sons a family discount. Why couldn't he sell them a portion of the farm for a reasonable price and let the Roloff legacy continue? The answer, according to this financial theory, is devastatingly simple. He couldn't give them a discount because the bank wouldn't let him. When you are leveraged to the hilt, you don't own your property. The lender does. If the farm was appraised at $4 million and Matt owed the bank $3.5 million against it to cover the divorce buyout and his bad investments, he physically could not sell it to Zach for $2 million. If he did, he would still owe the bank that missing $1.5 million. Cash he did not have. He needed a stranger to pay full market price, or better yet, an inflated market price, just to clear the liens and break even. This is the tragedy that Matt could never admit on camera. He couldn't look his sons in the eye and say, "I can't sell it to you cheap because I've mortgaged your inheritance to pay for my mistakes." Instead, he concocted a narrative about them not being ready or not being increasingly business savvy. He attacked their competence to hide his own incompetence. He torched his relationship with his twin boys because the alternative was admitting that the king of Roloff Farms was a pauper in a castle. He sacrificed his family to save his credit score. And the desperation didn't stop with his children. We have to talk about the disturbing reports regarding Chris Merrick. There are insider whispers circulating that Matt has been ruthlessly harassing Chris regarding financial matters, with some sources citing a dispute over a sum as large as $250,000. Whether this is related to property boundaries, shared expenses, or alleged wedding venue fees that Matt feels he is owed, the aggression is telling. A wealthy man does not nickel and dime his ex-wife's new husband. A wealthy man does not create friction over money when he is supposedly sitting on a multi-million-dollar empire. But a broke man does. A man who is panicking to keep his own empire from collapsing will chase every single quarter. If Matt is pressuring Chris and Amy for money, it is a sign that the liquidity crisis has reached a boiling point. He isn't doing it for sport. He is doing it because he has bills coming due that he cannot pay. It is the behavior of a man checking the couch cushions for change, but on a much larger, more humiliating scale. This is the climax of the illusion. The facade has dropped completely. Matt Roloff isn't the shrewd businessman playing 4D chess. He is a man trapped in a corner, lashing out at everyone. Amy, Zach, Jeremy, Chris, because they are all witnesses to his failure. He pushed them all away not because he wanted to be alone, but because he couldn't afford for them to get close enough to see the red ink on the ledger. So, where does this leave him? The fallout is the ultimate karma. The illusion shatters not with a bang, but with a whimper. After decades of projecting the image of the great provider, the builder of mansions, the master of the farm, look at where Matt Roloff is actually sleeping. Reports indicate that while the massive, unfinished dream home sits rotting in the Oregon rain, Matt has been living in what amounts to a temporary 200-square-foot setup. Some sources describe it as a glorified trailer. Others say he is squeezed into a tiny corner of the property while pretending to live large. He is surrounded by land he technically owns, but can't afford to maintain, building a house he can't afford to finish, estranged from the children he claimed to be building it all for. He is the king of nothing. The double wide he lived in for years was supposed to be temporary, a stepping stone to the mansion. Instead, it became his reality. The downsizing wasn't a choice. It was a mandate from the universe. The irony is crushing. He chased the big life, little people, big world, but his financial reality has shrunk to the size of a motel room. He traded his family for a fortune that turned out to be a mirage. The farm, once a place of joy and pumpkins and family gatherings, has become a prison of debt. And the saddest part? He is still trying to sell the lie. He is still on social media, posting vague updates, smiling for the camera, pretending the big plans are just around the corner. But we know better now. The house poor theory explains every tear, every fight, and every bad decision we have watched for the last few years. It transforms Matt from a villain into a tragic figure, a man consumed by the need to look successful even as the ground crumbles beneath his feet. He fooled TLC, he fooled the fans. For a long time, he even fooled his family. But the math never lies, and the bill has finally come due. Now, I have to ask you, did you see this coming? Did you always suspect that Matt was secretly struggling with money? Or did he fool you with his TV wealth? When he told Zach no, did you think it was tough love, or did you smell the desperation? This changes how we will watch every episode moving forward. The cracks are there if you know where to look. Sound off in the comments below. Tell me if you think Matt can turn this around, or if we are watching the final days of the Roloff empire. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the real story behind your favorite reality shows, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are digging deeper than anyone else, and you do not want to miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next investigation.